Hello everyone, my name is Pan Huimin. Before we proceed formally, I would like to ask all of you a question. Have you ever had such an experience? A teacher worked extremely hard to create a beautiful presentation with many pictures, text, and even background music. But after he finished speaking, you felt dizzy and confused and couldn't remember anything. This is not because the students are not intelligent enough, nor is it because the teachers are not responsible. The problem often lies in the design of teaching and learning, which doesn't match the working mechanism of the brain. When the design goes against the cognitive rules, understanding becomes difficult and the efforts turn into futile endeavors. Therefore, today we will talk about the multimedia learning cognitive zero, like teaching return to a way that the brain can understand, observe, and remember. Next, I will explain the multimedia learning connective zero and its application research in educational videos in a total of 6 parts. So, part 1, learning objectives. Next, we will follow the framework of cognitive rules and starting from understanding systematically explore the key mechanisms for achieving efficient learning and divide this into 4 parts for presentation. First, understanding the core. Clarify the essence of CTML, its theoretical framework, basic model, and the 3 major connective assumptions. Second, investigating the root cause. Track back to the theoretical basis of CTML, how the connective word zero explains the story and all of the phenomena in learning. Third, master the rules, grasp the 12 garden principles of multimedia learning to determine whether the design is effective or efficient. Fourth, practical implementation based on the teaching scenarios and media forms transform into actionable design strategies and application paradigm. Summary in one sentence. From what is it to why, and then to how to do it. Construct a teaching design loop based on connective rules. So, part 2, theoretical foundation of CTML. This theory was proposed and developed by Richard E. Meyer, a psychology professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara. It is regarded as the foundational framework for modern multimedia learning research. Mayer's research focused on a core issue: how to enhance learning effectiveness through the synergy of words and pictures. In other words, CTML attempts to answer why do images combined with language often lead to a better understanding than relying solely on language. The core idea is by processing information through both words and images, learners can construct a more complete mental model, thereby achieving better learning outcomes than with a single test. To understand the CTML, we first need to accept three fundamental assumptions about the human cognitive architecture, which determines the boundary conditions of instructional design. Dual channel assumption. When the brain processes multimedia information, it relies on two relatively independent cognitive channels. Visual channel handles images, diagrams, and text displayed on the screen. Auditory channel handles speech sounds, explanations, and language input. It can be compared to a two-line expressway. Information travels in separate lines cooperating with each other rather than milling and getting congested. Next, limited capacity assumption. The capacity of working memory is extremely limited, usually only being able to hold 5 to 7 information units. When the content is overly dense, the presentation is complex, or the input speed is so fast, cognitive overload occurs, just like a traffic jam on a two-line road during high traffic, directly leading to difficulties in understanding and failure in learning. Active processing assumption. Learning is not a passive recording of information, but rather an active process of constructing meaning. Learners must continuously perform the following steps: select, organize, integrate. They need to connect the new information with the existing knowledge network in long-term memory, thereby forming usable understanding. These three assumptions serve as the theoretical foundation of CTML and also constitute the basic criteria for evaluating the effectiveness of educational video design. In other words, the presentation of teaching content must align with the way the brain process information rather than going against it. Align with cognition or overload cognition. Adhering to the laws of cognition is the dividing line that determines whether educational design is effective. So next part 3, relevant zeros. Just now we mentioned that the information processing capacity of the brain is limited. It's a crucial phenomenon for has led to an important theoretical cornerstone of CTML, the cognitive load zero, which was proposed by Australian cognitive psychologist John Sweller. The core idea of CLT is that during the learning process, the load of working memory is the key variable that determines the effectiveness of learning. We can imagine the cognitive resources of the brain as a battery with a limited capacity. When there are a large number of irrelevant elements in the learning materials, such as fancy animations, complex backgrounds, stacked subtitles, or overly decorative layouts, an external cognitive load is created. These elements don't contribute to understanding, but instead waste battery power unnecessarily. On the contrary, We hope to allocate resources to the relevant cognitive load, that is, the thinking activities that are truly devoted to understanding, reasoning, and constructing knowledge structures, thereby facilitating the construction of knowledge in long-term memory. Therefore, all the design principles of CTML can essentially be understood as a single sentence. Manage cognitive load, allowing the brain to focus its energy on learning rather than fighting against the information. Not all efforts are directed towards learning. Some are merely wasted due to poor design. Part 4, 12 Golden Rules for Multimedia Learning. Under the framework of cognitive load, Meyer summarized the design of multimedia learning as 12 core principles. To be effectively applied, we can categorize them into three goals, corresponding to three different ways of load management. First, reduce extraneous load. The core task is to eliminate distractions and reduce noise so that the brain can allocate its resources to real learning. The principle of representativeness includes coherence, remove decorative elements to avoid cognitive noise, redundancy, avoid the repetition of the same content by the subtitles and the narration. Signal, use annotations, borders, and colors to highlight the key points of the structure. Temporal contiguity, present related content on the same screen and simultaneously appear. So don't let learners spend their energy on finding the key points. Second, manage intrinsic load. When the content itself is of high difficulty, our goal is to ensure that the information is well organized, avoiding overload. Key strategies include segmentation, break down the content rhythm and control the rate of information input. Pre-training, build a cognitive scaffold for key concepts before explaining. Use a microfree for memory. First build the framework, then fill in the content. First lay the foundation, and then you can build the house. The purpose of the design is to enable learners to keep up and be able to enter. Next, enhance German load. It is not about reducing the burden, but rather directing cognitive resources towards thinking and understanding. The corresponding principles are as follows. Multimedia integration of images and language to facilitate the construction of mental model. Modularity, appropriate allocation to visual or audio channels to enhance channel efficiency. Personalization, natural conversational expression to increase engagement. Voice and image, selection of more humans and cognitively friendly expression methods. Part 5, Educational Videos. Educational videos are a form of teaching medium that presents content through visual and auditory means, aiming to facilitate learning and also aiding in understanding and memory. The goal of educational video is not to simply present knowledge, but to enable learners to truly grasp and understand it. Part 6, Application Scenarios and Practice. The significance of zero lies in its practical application. Currently, educational videos are developing rapidly, ranging from micro lessons (MOOC) to short video knowledge content with various forms. However, the effects vary greatly. Here, educational videos don't simply mean recording the classroom proceedings or aiding animations. The core of educational videos lies in designing the presentation method based on the learner's understanding process. Its goal is very clear: lower the entry barrier to make it easier for learners to start learning, improve clarity and comprehensibility to facilitate rapid construction of meaning, reduce irrelevant distractions to ensure that attention is truly devoted to understanding, support self-control, allowing for pausing, reviewing and adjusting speed to achieve personalized learning paths. So, summarize in one sentence, the value of educational video lies not in being well product, but in being reliable in conveying information. It is designed for learning purpose, not for playback. That's why next we need to answer a crucial question. How can the design of the video truly follow the cognitive patterns of the human brain? In other words, how to apply CTML in educational videos. The core of CTML remains us that learners receive information through both visual and auditory channels, while cognitive resources are limited. Therefore, video design must align with the way the brain processes information rather than merely focusing on appearing attractive or being flashy. Specifically, one can start with the following five design principles. Structure first. Before the explanation, through training or structural overview, answer the question, what will we learn today to reduce the entry cost? Dual channel coordination. The visuals are used for structural presentation, while the voiceover is responsible for logical explanation to avoid the congestion caused by the simultaneous appearance of images, text, and narration. Reduce extraneous load, remove ineffective special effects, decorative materials, redundant subtitles, and arbitrary background music to minimize the external cognitive load to the greatest extent. signal and guide the attention. Use a rules, box lines, highlighting, and numbering, and so on to explicitly mark the key points, thereby reducing the ineffective consumption of searching for information. Manageable pace. The content is presented in sections, allowing for pausing and replaying. It also enables different learning speed to align with different comprehension paces. Overall, the application goal of CTML is not to make video more flashy, but to make the presentation of knowledge more understandable. The visual presentation on the screen is only the first step. It's true completion lies in being understood, observed, and remembered. The practical essence of CTML makes the video easy to understand rather than just appealing to the eye. Putting knowledge on the screen is not enough. It must also be placed in the learner's cognitive structure. So that's all. Returning to our original question, why do we study hard but still achieve limited results? Why do some video even through we watch them repeatedly for to be remembered to neutralize? The answer doesn't lie in the learner's lack of intelligence or the teacher's lack of effort. Inside, it often stems from the mismatch between the teaching design and the cognitive rules of the brain. CTML tells us humans process information through both visual and auditory channels. Working memory has a capacity limit. Effective learning relies on actively constructing meanings. This means that if the teaching design ignores these principles, learning is merely about confronting information rather than observing knowledge. The cognitive world zero further reminds us not all efforts are directed towards learning. Some are merely consumed by poor design. We must reduce external load, manage internal load, and promote relevant load in order to ensure that every bit of attention is devoted to understanding. The 12 multimedia learning principles provide us with specific design coordinates. The application scenarios of educational videos enable zero to truly interpractic, from prioritizing structure to collaboration of neural channels, from reducing interference to guiding attention, from controllable rhythm to supporting an autonomous learning. Each step is not to technique but a connective alignment. Therefore, I would like to conclude with one sentence. A truly effective education or design is not about putting knowledge on the screen, but about allowing it to enter the brain. The value of educational video lies not in the viewing right, but in the comprehension right. In the future, whether we are creating micro lessons, conducting classroom teaching, developing online courses, or conducting knowledge dissemination, we all look forward to starting from today and bringing design back onto the track of cognitive words. Let each explanation be more in line with the brain and also closer to where learning truly takes place. So thank you all. This is all I have to share about CTML. Bye.